one time. Sure. Grip it. Get it. Double it.
Boxing fans,
Grip.
make some noise!
Saturday this weekend, my sister's got a big fight going on.
You know I can't win without my baby sis. You think I'm gonna win? You better say yes.
I find girls and bring them to the motel.
Is it her?
Yeah, it's her.
If you want to go through with this, you have to be all in and play the part. And once you're there, you're on your own.
If I were you, I'd walk away.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. Put your seatbelt on, please.
I'm angry. It was my responsibility to keep her safe, and I failed to do so.
Where is she?
She's gone. I'm never gonna see her again. Nobody's looking because nobody cares.
Not a day goes by where I don't think about this little girl.
You think I remember their names?
This is about survival.
Go!
You gotta be ready.
Get out of here, girls! Go!
I tell myself she's dead, but she keeps swimming on back to me to remind me she's still out there.
Where's my sister?
Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today we have a real treat as we are talking to a young lady who is literally exploding on the screen in the new AAFCA film, Catch the Fair One. We are going to kick things off by introducing you to the AAFCA members who are on our call today, beginning with our facilitator, Katia Woods in Philadelphia, Carolyn Hines in Toronto, Rhonda Rasha Penrice in Atlanta, and Nancy Green in Baltimore. I'm gonna let you ladies do what you do so well, and I will see you on the other side. The film is terrific, by the way.
Katia Woods, Copper Soul Show, and the Philadelphia Tribune. One thing that I love is, it's a very heavy movie, but the thing that motivates her is the love for her sister. I have a sister, I'm not too sure. I would still fight for her, but talk about why, that was such an important part to show, because, she had so many things working against her, but this was the one thing that's gave her reason to push forward.
Yes, thank you so much. But first, I just want to introduce myself and my language and recognize the land that I'm on now. So, Wuni Watampin, Wuni Kusuk, Watasuis Mikwanog, Nutamaz Sikonke Wapanaak, Nutamaz Nipmunk, Nutamaz Cherokee, Nutamaz Cape Verde, the Thai province, Rhode Island. Hello, greetings, good day. My given name is Many Feathers, Many Talents, and I'm from the Sikonke Wampanoag tribe, with lineage to the Nipmunk and Cherokee tribes, as well as lineage to the Cape Verde Islands, originally from Providence, Rhode Island. And actually, I'm back home at my mom's house, so I reside in, I'm in Rhode Island. So just want to recognize the Narragansett tribes, Pokanoket, Pecasset, and all the outlining tribes, which is my Wampanoag Nation, Nipmunk, and surrounding tribes. So thank you so much for having me to Butney. That's a really good question. And there was so many things, so many themes that motivated her. And we didn't want to go in with the obvious that, she was just going to box everybody and, be like, boxing everybody up and punching them. But, it started with Joseph. Joseph had this, bones bare story that he wanted to tell of a really strong woman that wants to go look for a missing sibling. And the sibling aspect, we really connected on immediately because number one, we are both, have really close ties with our siblings. I'm the baby, and so isn't he. And I have two brothers and two sisters and have a really close bond with my brothers and sisters. And when Joseph, the director, originally approached me with this idea that he had, just kind of finding out, just like the general public, about missing and murdered Indigenous women epidemic, he caught me at an interesting time where I just had lost one of my brothers to brain cancer. So I was kind of grieving him, and the stars aligned. It was kind of weird. So he just caught me at a very vulnerable, very expressive about my sibling moment. And with our story, she's the protector. She's the older sister. She's her younger sister is, if you will, the fair one, where she's the older half Native, half Cape Verdean or half Black one. So she feels extra overprotective and extra wanting to get acceptance from not only her mother, but the Native community that surrounds her. So it was really important to, you know, kind of suggest and not ride too much on the connection with her and her sister, but you knew just by seeing those couple of clips that her sister meant everything. Her sister was her biggest boxing fan. Her sister would go with her everywhere, and she had to make sure her sister was safe. So feeling guilty, number one, that her sister even got taken away from her, but then it was kind of on her watch, because she told her when she was at the gym that, you know, you sure you want to walk home? And then she was there supporting her big sister because she knew she had a big fight. So she sacrificed, you know, wanting to go home to walk home. And then she got ripped out of her sister's arms. So that was one of the biggest motivations for her to enter into this dark, dark world of sex trafficking. And the sister aspect also in a whole, because we don't do location specific, we don't do tribal specific. Sister is kind of an ultimate universal representation to our sisters, Black, color, anything of color, BIPOC, Native, Hawaiian, Spanish, Asian. We wanted that to represent all our sisters that go missing. So it's a story and a artistic interpretation of a very harsh epidemic that's been plaguing many communities, not just the Native community, but especially the Native community, that we wanted to really hone in on that sister aspect. And it's just not sisters, it's boys, it's girls, it's older men, it's older women, and all in between, from ages 3 all the way up to 60, 70 years old. So that was kind of one of those things that, since we had to kind of land out of a lot of themes in 80 minutes, we kind of just touched on those things, but a lot of things had layers. It was very, very layered film, or very layered story.
Hi, Carolyn First. Here's what happened, Carolyn Talks podcast. Thank you so much for making this story with Joseph, because it is the reality of missing and exploited and murdered Indigenous women is one that the media has not seen fit to give as much coverage as is needed. That's in America as well as in Canada, where I am. And I want you to talk a bit about the just being very subtle in discussing the dynamics of your character, and also of you being half Native American and half Black, and getting that into the story, but in very subtle ways, because it comes through in the scene with the mom Jaya, played by Kimberly Norris. And I was just like, this is very interesting, and it kind of like shows like how there's still a struggle of identity within like the Black and the Native American communities.
Yeah, you know, mainstream media seems to not highlight anything that has to do with Indigenous people, whether it's positive or negative, but they'll highlight the negative a lot, if any. You know, we're the first people of the land, any land that you are around the world. It's not just Canada and America. There's Indigenous people everywhere. And we're usually the last to be talked about and looked at as a foreigner on our own land, which is always so baffling to me. So we're leading in statistics such as substance abuse, such as murder, such as kidnapping, depression, suicide. I mean, the list goes on. And we know what happens in Native country. We know what happens in Native community, but the mainstream media and non-Native allies to push towards change, to use the resources that are outside of Native communities, is what we need. You know, so as a Black Native, especially as an athlete that has a platform in front of not a huge array of people, but, you know, I was the first woman fight to be on HBO, over 1.4 million views. So if I had a chance to make my statement, I was going to come out representing who I was, so people can just ask the questions, have the conversation. So I found it my duty, so to speak, to really bring attention to missing and murdered Indigenous women, residential school children being uncovered finally, the accountability that we need for the residential school organizers that was horrible, the institutions, to these pipelines that are all these 3 different issues are all interconnected. These pipelines attract man camps attract, they want sex slaves. They want, you know, that sex trafficking market becomes explosive in these areas where these man camps are. And you'll see these hot spots where these man camps are for drilling these pipelines through these sacred lands for years on end, because that's a big job. And so you'll see, but you won't see that or hear that on mainstream media, which is really, really, really baffling to me. And, you know, especially in the Native community, the anti-Blackness in the Native community is something that's so taboo and so prevalent still to this day. Anti-Blackness anywhere is just not accepted, especially with the Northeast Woodland tribes. Now we're all along the East Coast, from north all the way down to the south. We are what we call first contact tribes. So we made, it's in the description, first contact with settlers. So naturally, between the settlers coming to try to settle here and then other people trying to bring slaves that they captured in Africa here, you can only imagine the types of interracial mixing that we had going on. A lot of it was due to survival. My tribe and my nation personally, after the King's Philip War, which was all in New England, we were damn near wiped out. So to try to hide, there was actually necessity to start mixing with other races, i.e. slaves that were here that were trying to make a home for themselves when they got free. So there's so much history in it. And the specific connection with Kaylee, the character, and her mother, Jaya, we took a lot of things out of my real life. I am Cape Verdean and I am Native American, and I've always found a struggle in that balance. So that scene is very, very interesting. Again, it has a lot of layers because she not only feels guilty it was on her watch, but she feels even more guilty because she just feels that she doesn't get accepted because of who her father is to her mother. And that was really important to highlight because, number one, Native Americans we don't get seen, and especially Black Natives, we don't get seen, not even by our own people. I'm not Black enough, I'm not Cape Verdean enough, I'm not Native enough, I have curly, crazy hair, I look different, but I look like the people who were my ancestors. So we wanted to keep that. That was really important for me and for my people that I represent. Like, we want to do this, we're gonna have to do it all, get it all out there.
Great answer. Thank you so much for going into such detail. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Green with Film Critique. And I just want to say, first of all, I really enjoyed this movie. And I feel like the topic is so important. Two things that I really noticed in this. One, she felt like a superhero to me, almost, with her outfit when she was training and boxing and everything. And also, the second thing that I found actually very sad is that in her being a superhero, she seemed to have to do a lot of this alone. And I noticed the lack of community. Her mother turned her back on her. There weren't very many people to help her in this. And it didn't seem like this was, these missing children and women were a big concern to anyone else. So I wanted to know if you could speak a bit on that and how that brings these issues to the forefront.
Well, kind of going back what I said of the lack of resources and kind of, just because we have sovereign nations who are sovereign and have their own governing bodies and whatnot, it's like a double-edged sword where there's, okay, you have your own governing body, you have your own police, so we don't want anything to do with you. As far as the children and not that being so much attention on it again or not doing anything about it is because we don't have any resources in those really big hotspot areas of reservations. For example, the Navajo reservation is about the size of Rhode Island. There's maybe 25, 26 police on that entire reservation. So, when you have a lot of things going on, some things take priority over other things. And then you get the assumption from outside governing bodies that put in their head, oh, they probably want it to be taken. No one really cares. Oh, they probably come from a drunk family, or there's a list of different stereotypes that go with being on a reservation or being from an Indian nation, Native nation, where it gets kind of shunned aside. And these reservations, there's some that are thriving. There's most that aren't. There's most that don't even have the simple resource such as running water, let alone a police that's gonna care about them going missing. And you can get really sensitive topic, but you can get into jurisdiction where if a non-Native commits a crime on Native land, Native police can't arrest them, they can't prosecute them. So then why is the state of the government, the federal government, going to take responsibility for this? They put it in a file, it gets dusty, and everybody forgets about it. Especially up in Canada, I've learned that a lot of families will try to record their missing loved ones as white or even Latino, or anything other than Native, for hopes that maybe they'll get looked for. When they put Native, they just don't care because it happens so much, which is so bass backwards You know what I mean? So yeah, it's one of those things where it's this movie was necessary on so many different levels. So it's one of the, and it's also, I keep saying, the platform film is just storytelling. So this is just bringing some kind of awareness to it. If we all admit there's a problem, because it's a big problem, if we make it a big problem, it will be a big problem. It took one white girl in America to go missing. And I feel for her family, but it's a little tough for me to feel that I get alerts on my phone all day, every day about another Native elder, about another missing girl, missing boy, missing black boy, missing black girl, Native, anything. And I don't see the same attention being brought to it. That's when that becomes a real problem. But they want our resources. They want our sacred lands. They want our fruitful lands. They want our ceremonies. They want our clothes. They want our costumes. They want to be partaking the things that we believe in, but they don't want to respect the people and the spirit that it comes from.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay, it's Rhonda. I actually wrote the review for the wrap for this. I want you to kind of talk about, you worked to craft the script with the director. So can you talk about that process and, what was important about it for you, and why did you take that leap in addition to, starring in the film? I mean, you do a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, so Joseph had originally approached me, like I said, with a bare bones script about a strong woman going to find somebody who was missing to her. So, and like I said, he was one of the many that really didn't know about missing and murdered Indigenous women. So when he found me, it was back in 2017. He actually slid in my DM, my Instagram DM, and he had, directed some TV, and he had that movie Monosucias, which touches on a lot of more really necessary story to tell. So his initial approach was really respectful, and he just initially knew he wanted to tell an important story, but he knew it wasn't his story to tell. So, and immediately, he knows he's not a woman. He knows he's not an Indigenous woman. So he wanted to just hear the perspective of which was my perspective, in the perspective of my community, because I, being a mixed Native and knowing of this and knowing I have a target, I have never directly, like my sister's never gone missing, or my aunt, mother, or something directly, but I feel the pain of our people. So he immediately just wants to get to know me. He sat down and talked with my elders. I shared stories with him about things that I learned on my path, visiting different reservations and working closer with different MMIW organizations, speaking at these different functions and just sitting there and listening, really. So I just shared that with him. And early on, he asked me to be a creative collaborator because he really wanted to tell this story correctly. So anything that he had, it was almost like, well, okay, what would you say? Or how would you picture this? Or what are these things that are really important? How can we highlight these things? And it kind of was just a back and forth collaboration for about 2 years, about like 10 or 12 different versions of the script, until we really got it fine tuned. And even down to like the colors represented, and what is more realistic and not so Hollywood movie type was really important. Is it too dark, or is it not dark enough? Because, he really took the reins as far as he knows the industry. He's a very talented filmmaker, and that's not me. I'm very creative, but he really honed in on how we were going to tell it, how we were going to do it, what these themes are. We could have went really Hollywood and used like really burly villain look type, but I'm like, it's these everyday guys that actually have families and nobody knows. And he uses this quote a lot, saying the film had to be unpredictable yet inevitable, hence the reason why it ended the way it needed to. You're gonna have to sit and deal with it, just like these families have to sit and deal with this every day. And to kind of touch back in your question previously, she was alone. She was very alone in the fact that she didn't feel enough for her mom. She didn't feel enough or supported by her community. So she tried to take it upon herself to find her sister because it meant so much. But she figured, if I do this thing, I'll get accepted. Finally, I'll get accepted by my community, my mother, myself. I'll feel worthy enough to do these things. How she felt and how she feels when she's a championship boxer.
Hi, Kathy again. The thing I love the fact that you're bringing up how we in the media treat it differently when it is a white girl missing and compared to like a Black girl, and even worse, a Native American girl. What can we do? You know, other than of course amplifying and using our platform, but what can we do to help raise awareness? Because the numbers are absolutely staggering, you know, and it seems as though you know, people will point out the disparities, and some families have been really good at saying, you know what, we're going to use our pain or whatever to help amplify the issue of people of color, young girls that are missing as well. But again, it just seems like it's like a little flash, and then way more people go missing, and nothing gets done to really hone in on what is going on, where, who's responsible, and furthermore, as you stated, getting the Native police the assistance, not overseeing, but the assistance that they need to help lower these numbers.
Well, there's a lot of grassroots organizations that I've met in my, you know, my travels. Again, I've only had the ability to go to a couple of different things, but learned so much from people who had to start their own search parties and their own grassroots organizations to get help to find their daughter. There's one specific story that sticks out so much. She kept missing her daughter by 10 minutes. The kidnappers were FaceTiming her with a gun to her head, saying where she was, and she kept missing her by 10 minutes. So she had to start a grassroots organization just of aunties, friends, and family to go try to find her daughter. She still hasn't found her daughter. So things like that, and kind of, I tell people, they always ask me, how do you help? Number one is just know what land you occupy. That's something simple. Really know what tribe land is. You probably have a bunch of non-state or non-federally recognized tribes, but historically recognized tribes that are around your area. See if there's any organizations how you can help. There's resources that maybe you may have that may assist other communities. There's massive, big organizations, and not every organization is created equal, but because this is such a deep subject, I just encourage people to just find out what locally, what are your skills and what is your local community doing for it, as well as, unfortunately, we live in an age where virtual and social media is a necessary evil, and you're scrolling on things. Seek out a missing and murdered Indigenous like page, Instagram page, share stuff, content, have these conversations with people at tables. And if you have an opportunity to speak in front of a group of people you may think or may or may not know this subject, just have these conversations. There was this one girl that actually her remains were found a few days ago, and she went missing in 2019. Her name is Jamie Yazzie. We have a thing called Say Her Name. Remember these girls. Use your voice. Use anything that you may have. But what really matters is just locally, just find out what land you occupy and make it a big deal. Scream it, yell it, post it every day, because the more people know about it, the more awareness, whoever is responsible for this, because it's crazy that there's no leads on these people. The more that they're exposed, the more they're going to try to hide. You know, there's also something else that passed. I forgot the politician's name, but things are starting to move in a positive direction where there's more light being shined on this. More people know about this. There's runs for it. We have a national day of remembrance, which is May 5th. On Valentine's Day, we were wearing red to remember. The more that we show it, like, because we are visual people, we're human beings. There's like little kids with coloring books. I don't want to see the words. I just want to see the pictures. The more you have those questions, when people want to ask questions, why are you doing that? You have the answers. And people, you know, we talk a lot. We just like telephone, you know what I mean? So people are going to want to know and research some things. But it's really goes down to just having these conversations. And I know there was a law that's being worked on or passed, don't quote me, in the state of Washington, where these hot spots that are really high statistics of missing and murdered Indigenous women, they're starting to install cameras and alert systems on people's phones, things like that. Cameras, especially the remote locations where these reservations are. I am such a huge advocate for, yes, can we put cameras? We have satellite. You guys can tell us the weather. Just forget the weather. How about we tell us where these women, these people are? You know what I mean? So things like that, legislation wise, if you're into politics and laws, there might be a law or a bill that needs to get passed. It's been sitting in office like this one. There was another bill that just got pushed again after 2 years of sitting. So things are starting to move. Things are starting to get momentum, but I really just encourage everybody to just educate yourselves, have these conversations, and just make it a big deal.
All right. One of the things that this film really highlights is the network and how big these networks are, the human trafficking networks and the sex slavery networks. And Katie, she goes on a step-by-step journey where she goes like from the micro and then she finds the macro, like the people who are in charge of these rings. And something that really struck me is how whereas for her, she had no community, she didn't have anyone to back her, she didn't have anyone to support her. These men and these women that are involved, they have a huge network, they have a huge support system. And a lot of that support system and a lot of that network has to do with their ability and their privilege as white people, because we know a lot of these people are white and they get away with doing these things, not only because the law is on their side, but their whiteness and their privilege gives them the invisibility to be able to blend in, and seem like normal people. Like you're the main antagonist. He had a whole family, but then as it's revealed, these men are still, they're toxic when they're around these young girls and these women that they're exploiting, but they're also toxic at home, especially if they have a spouse who is also a person of color, as is revealed in the film. So talk a bit about that, about just the racial dynamics of how being white affords them the privilege to literally get away with what they're doing.
I mean, we all know the most powerful person on this earth is a white man. I mean, to say it straight bluntly, I mean, the power it holds, and it's just the years and years and centuries of kind of banging that into everyone's DNA, whether we want to admit it or not. In the back of our mind, we know that, you know what I mean? So to change that, we just start putting people and men and women of color in charge, educate our younger generations on what's really important, because they're the future and they're going to be the future leaders. And if we have more of our, especially young girls, I work with young girls, and to know, I think, and this is not a fact, but this is just my opinion, the fact that, and I can speak from experience, growing up as a young girl, we think we're not important, especially a young girl of color. We don't feel heard, we don't feel seen, we feel misunderstood. So really creating the space for our younger generation to be motivated enough to care enough about themselves to learn something about helping to lead these countries and this world is kind of what I believe we need to start. We know what the problem is, or we know what the whole leader of this world is, which is a white man. But behind that white man is a network, as you said, of so many moving parts. And we, I think, as non-white people or non-white men, need to be that whole network. We don't need a face to speak for us. We can all speak for ourselves, but we're so much stronger in numbers. And just showing up side by side, not behind a leader. Anybody can lead. You're gonna, all right, pass the mic to this one, pass the mic to that one. Just educate and let even our generation know that we can make a change. I may not have the talent and be really strong in this avenue that you are, but I'm strong in this. And if we're standing side by side and having these conversations, we'll learn each other and where we can be a force coming together, not you go, then I go. It's all together. I think that's the weak spot. Everybody wants to have this one person, i.e. a leader or a president, and he's the puppet behind this massive thing. The people that you don't see run this world. And we're seen or unseen, and people don't want to see us, but I think we're much stronger as a force, and just really listen to people. So many people are like this and everybody has this information. Information is not knowledge. What you do with the information is knowledge, and that leads to wisdom, and that leads to change. So that's kind of I don't know if it's a fact, but it's kind of an opinion on how we can change the narrative.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to be including links that I can find into the description box for my YouTube channel when I post this. So thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Hi again. One thing that I noticed with the movie, and I found this, it was actually for him having no lines and how little time he was in the movie. I found it very disheartening to see the Native American man helping the human trafficker. And so this is a conversation in a lot of communities of people of color, how men of color don't always support the women in their communities, which leaves them vulnerable to these kinds of things. So I wanted to know if you could touch upon that a bit, and also why that was included in the movie as well.
I'm so glad you asked that question because no one has yet. And that was a huge piece of the puzzle. And we did that on purpose. Number one being, just like with any race, it's shame. You know, how if you're ashamed and you're self-hating your own race, a lot of times people will subconsciously, not even consciously, be on the enemy's side almost and feel more accepted if they help against their own race because they hate themselves so much. And that's a common theme in the Native community, in any community. I think there's people of every race that self-hate, but especially if you're coming from a race that has so much genetic genocide, and from the men and women side, it's just genetics don't really have, you know, we all feel that. There's a lot of different stories and different feelings amongst Native men and women that self-hate because the world hates us so much. So they just kind of go along with that narrative. So we want to use that we dropped that little pin to see if anybody caught it, because he felt needed by this, and this white person saw that in him. Very smart to see that this person really hates himself. So if I hate these people and he hates himself, he's going to do whatever I ask him to do to get against the very people that he hates, which is the person he looks at in the mirror. And also, as far as the men in our communities, that is a huge theme with us, is that the men need to step up in these communities and support the women. Because as far as I've always been taught, especially my family bloodline, our women run things. Our women are matriarchs. Our women are sachems or chiefs. We're clan mothers. We run the community. The sachem or chief of a nation, of a tribe or a clan, may it be a man, but the decision makers are the women. And we always have been, as far as I'm taught. The Northeast Woodland tribes, it might be different all over the place, but where I'm from Wampanoag Nation, women run things. You know, it doesn't, if we're not feeling it, that doesn't happen. The men always support us. They stand behind us at times to support us to make the decisions. They're the muscle, we're the mouthpiece and the decision makers. So I believe our men making this a big deal. Our women can scream until we're blue and red in the face, but once we start seeing men behind us in these marches, in these talks, on these tables, in these conferences, it's much more power by them just being there and being a support. You don't have to physically do or say anything, but when we know as women that we got the support of a strong man, even just there, if you see a group of women, but you see a couple of men, warriors behind them, you're like, you know what? I ain't even mess with them. You know what I mean? So I just think men bringing their presence and standing with women in every aspect and every issue is so powerful. Silence and just standing there is so powerful. Hence the reason when I do come out with my fights, I have men and women with me. Women go first. But I have our men, and I have men asking me, warriors asking me, can we please walk you out because we support you, sister? And that is so powerful. You don't physically have to do anything. Just be there for us.
Yes. And that is so important. And this was a very powerful film. I enjoyed it so much. Yeah. And I love the blending of this kind of film that is kind of like, you know, a mainstream action film with this very important message. So I thought that was important as well. So thank you.
I mean, and just kind of to add something to that too, I didn't even say it, but the fact that my character had to kill her own kind, like she's trying to get accepted from these people. Now she has to kill. And that was the first time she ever killed. And it was one of her own to do it. She was willing to do that to even find her sister. So that was just really a key thing that we wanted to kind of like the emotionality of that entire scene.
Yeah. Thank you.
And the sadness that she had to even do that to save her sister, you know. But I was curious, you know, at the end of last year, you know, having Bruce come out, and now, you know, having your film come out, I wonder, what is it about the power of boxing that has been the gateway to show these very deep and important issues?
I believe boxing, and I've been doing this for over 20 years now and 13 and a half years as a professional. But what attracted me to boxing was that soul aspect of the sport and the beauty of the chaos. It's so beautiful to watch a fight, to watch these two people paint a picture as it's a whole story every round. And people think that you got to be mean and angry and you have to be so calm and grounded and one with yourself and kind of in the moment and so present. And visually for boxing, it will always be the most classy sport, if you will. I have nothing against MMA or anything, but I believe everybody can digest boxing a little bit better than they can MMA. MMA is a little bit more in your face. And I always looked at boxing as just an art. I'm an artist, I'm an expressive an artist. So every boxer or boxing gym or trainer, or even not just the fighter, the trainers, the managers, the cut men, the promoters, everybody has a backstory. I don't think you'll run across any fighter, professional, amateur, indifferent, that doesn't have a crazy backstory. Everybody has a story, but I found with fighting and boxing, there's so much depth to each aspect of it. And there's so many moving parts, hence the reason why I even found so many parallels between the boxing world and the entertainment world. I just think that visually, and because of classics like Raging Bull, classics like Rocky, everybody knows Rocky. Everybody, even if they've never thrown a punch or watched a boxing movie in their life, everybody's seen at least one or two Rockies. And it's just that familiarity to kind of draw you in to see this action. And then you're here now. Okay, now let's tell this story. I think and I can't even say just because I'm a boxer, if there's something that I see somebody wearing gloves, I'm like, all right, what's this movie about? Even if it's a terrible movie, I just think visually and just everybody wants to root for the underdog too. Everybody wants to see the underdog win, you know what I mean? And everybody likes to see the big mouthpiece who's, just privileged, entitled person go down. And that's usually kind of like the black and white of boxing movies and or just fights. Everybody likes to see the underdog win. And even with the real boxing world, the drama, the lead up to boxing, the talking, the press conferences, the training, everybody, it's just one of those things that you're just drawn to it. And I believe that just painting that picture and really using it as an art form is really beautiful to draw people in instead of, let's start with a shooting scene. I think starting with a boxing scene or including that boxing is draws people in. And for our film, we wanted to paint this picture of this really powerful, strong warrior that was at the pinnacle peak of her career. But even she, this strong warrior, physically just demanding warrior, could not take down this massive corporation of these evil people doing this. Though she tried, even she can't do it. At the end of the day, she wasn't gonna take down this massive corporation. So
yeah, I said it was a call to action. So
absolutely.
Callie, thank you so much for your time. This movie is amazing, and we are certainly looking forward to spreading the word. So thank you again. On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film critics, we thank you for watching this episode of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day.
Whitney, thank you.
Thank you.